Gemara. Okay, Kumlen and a black Gemara. Today's daf is daf Kuf Chaf Amid Aleph, the very tail end of Masech Yevamos. We learned the Mishnah yesterday, we're actually up to the Gemara Kufi Tesla base in the bottom. We learned the Mishnah yesterday that the sisters-in-law are not believed about each other either, so each one comes back and says that my husband died. Neither of them get married because how do you know your brother's not alive? You cannot trust your sister-in-law. Then we said if one of them had witnesses that her husband died, and the other one does not have witnesses, the one who does not have witnesses can marry, so he's free because her brother-in-law is dead, no witnesses, but the one who had witnesses is stuck because maybe her brother-in-law is still alive. And then we said if one of them has children, obviously she is free, and the one who has no children is stuck. And the last case in Mishnah was there were two other brothers alive, so they married two other brothers. The original two, the original husband, we don't know if the husband is alive or not. We cannot trust their testimony regarding each other, but they married two other brothers, and then those two brothers died. The question is, and the only two brothers that might be alive are the ones that they tested their original husbands. So therefore, one opinion says, well, it reverts back to the original situation. They're stuck. And Rabbi Lazar says, once they got married, they're out of it. The Gemara is going to try to understand Rabbi Lazar's view in a minute. First, we have a Braisa. The Braisa adds one more case. Tana we learned. What happens to Zu? Let's say Reuven's wife, Leah, has Eidim, witnesses, Ubanim, and children. So she's free anyway, because she has children, but she has witnesses her husband died. Well, the Zu and Shimon's wife, Rachel, Lo Eidim has no witnesses that her husband died, but Lo Banim, she has no children, so she has to marry a brother-in-law, but her brother-in-law, the witnesses are dead. Then Shteim Mutaras, they're both permitted. That's the additional case the Braisa adds. And then this is the last case in the Mishnah. It's Yadmu. They both married the two surviving brothers. The Meisu Hayavami, and these two surviving brothers also died. Then Hasun and Nasai, they still cannot get married because they still the original two husbands. How do you know that the other husband is not alive? Only the testimony of your sister-in-law. You can't trust them. But Ablaza says, once they're permitted, once they marry the brothers, now they're free. You don't go back to the first case. Now the question is why? Boy, this is Rabbi. My time at Ablaza, what possible logic Ablaza have? Is it because he holds in principle, so maybe he argues on this very fundamental principle. He holds that you could trust each other. You could trust each other. And so the obvious question that they're showing to ask is, if that's what Rabbi Lazar holds, that the girls, so why is he arguing here? Why didn't he argue in the Mishnah before when we said that 5 women that don't trust each other? He should have said something there. So the difference is over here, no. Over there, he would agree you cannot trust them. But over here, because each one is really is really testifying about themselves. They're saying that their own husband died, so they want to free themselves. In the meantime, as a result of that, they're testifying on behalf of their sister-in-law. But because the thrust of their testimony is about themselves, Rabbi Lazar says in this case you can trust them. In the previous Mishnah, a sister-in-law came along and said, "By the way, your husband is dead. We don't trust him. Maybe she's trying to harm you." But in this case, the sister-in-law is saying, "My husband died," which happens to be your future brother-in-law, and the other one says her husband died. Because each one is testifying about themselves, and then the I guess, and you're one of the beneficiaries of our testimony, but that isn't the primary objective. Then Rabbi Lazar holds you can believe. That's one possible way. I do it perhaps from the Hila Mekalkula Nafsha. The fact is that the reason why we believe her is because she's hurting herself as well. Because she is the one who is going to end, based on her own testimony, she's going to go get married. And if it turned out to be her husband's alive, she's going to hurt herself. And this svara that we learned last time, we're going to say again here, the idea that I don't care if I hurt myself as long as I harm you, Rabbi Lazar doesn't believe in that opinion. Goliath, Plishti can say that, but not her. What's the difference between these two? What happens if she's not harming herself because she's not really into getting married, but the other one wants to get married first? So it depends. If you say that I can testify on your behalf, especially if I'm testifying about myself and you're the beneficiary, even though I'm not planning to get married straight away, you can get married because you can trust my testimony. But if you say the reason is I don't want to harm myself, that's only if I got married. But if I'm not getting married, only you're getting married, I'm not harming myself. I just said things, doesn't matter. If she got married, then it's sort of get married because we'll say, there's no way in the world that she's going to harm herself just to harm you. So therefore, we trust her. But if she did not get married based on her own testimony, we're not going to marry you. So which one is it? Which one is it? Tashma coming here. Rabbi says, the wording he uses is, since now that you married your others, the two surviving men before they died, so now they're permitted to everybody. So The word is hutruli. I mean, he doesn't say because she got married, and she doesn't say because she married the surviving brother. Must be that she's telling the truth because she actually married the surviving brother. If she would not have married the surviving brother, then it's one thing. But because she married the surviving brother, it sounds like you can trust her testimony. But so if you say like this, that the reason is because she's not going to harm herself. She married her brother-in-law herself, and if her husband is still alive, then then right now that means she married somebody with the Isa chorus and all that, and she cannot go back to her original husband. That therefore makes sense that this is because you got married, you can marry the other one. The reason is basically because one can testify after the other. Then why do you have to say because they both married these other brothers? Therefore, we can assume that it's true what they're saying, and therefore the mudl chaladam. But you're saying that even if she did not, if the reason is because they are trusted about each other, then even if she did not marry the surviving brother, she should still be trusted. Must be Rabbi Eliezer holds the only reason why we trust them is because they actually went ahead and they got married. What happened over here was there were two surviving brothers. They both married a surviving brother, including your sister-in-law. That means that she really is following through on her testimony that she got married. That must be the reason why we trust her. Rabbi Eliezer must no proof. Maybe Rabbi Eliezer Maybe Rabbi Eliezer says no. I say you can trust one sister-in-law even if she did not get married, because since she's testifying really about herself, you can believe her about the other one as well. But this is what Rabbi Eliezer said to the rabbis. According to me, I hold the principle that one can testify regarding her sister-in-law, especially when he's really testifying about himself, and the sister-in-law is just a mere beneficiary. Even though that she didn't get married, Minaz will marry the sister-in-law. According to you, you don't believe in that. But at least admit to me that if she did get married, if she married a surviving brother, that means she really acted on her testimony. They must be telling the truth. Why would she harm her own life? So you must be telling the truth. And the Rabbanan say, no, there's no proof whatsoever. You know why? Because there's a concept that Goliath said, Shimshon Gibber said, Tom was nafshi implishtim, who the heat of that. Now we follow the footsteps of Shimshon Gibber that he says, I don't care if I die and let's collapse the entire building, as long as all my enemies die with me. So we haven't yet proven one way or another. In the Swara Rabbi Eliezer. So the Gemara touched my Isha Shaholcha. A woman, she and her husband overseas, came back that her husband died. We trust her complicitly, and we also say that she could even collect a ksuba, not like the other Tanu says that she can't. And when it comes to money things, we don't. Tina says she can get married, the title ksuba, and she can take a ksuba, the charasa asura, but the tzara remains asa. She comes back and tell the story. The co-wife cannot trust her because maybe she's harming us, she's lying and everything else. So as far as she's concerned, we trust her, but the co-wife cannot go ahead and marry based on that. Rabbi Eliezer says, since you trust her testimony regarding herself, you can also trust her. The co-wife can also get married because look at the sister-in-law went ahead and based on this, she decided to get married. Says why don't we say why don't we just say that the reason is because since she became mutter nisa, she got married. Sorry. So why don't we say the Gemara is very simple. It says here, Rabbi Eliezer says because she became mutter, the tzara is also mutter. What do we see from here? That as soon as he gave her a heter, not because she got married. As soon as he gave her a heter, the first wife, and we trust her, the second wife already is free as well. So it's not because she harmed herself, because she got married and she showed us that she really actually, she's acting on her evidence, it's on testimony. No, it's because we trust one on the other. That's what it seems clear to me. And here's again, like another Shem says, she's testifying about herself to free herself. Meanwhile, the co-wife is a beneficiary. In this case, Rabbi Eliezer holds, you can trust her. Says he about no, Ema. Why don't we read into it? Maybe you have to wait one more step. You permitted the wife who came and gave the testimony to get married. Then Nisas. Once she got married, then the co-wife is released. So that's what we did. So in other words, to make sure that she's prepared to harm herself, obviously she's telling the truth. Maybe that's the reason. Says the Gemara, who said, why can't we, let's say if this woman's a conniving woman, Let's say simply, even if she gets married, it proves nothing. You know why? Maybe her husband was really alive, and maybe she got a divorce from her husband overseas. So instead of saying that she got divorced, she decided to come over. My husband is dead. So if she got married, she has no problem. Even though he comes back alive, she'll produce a divorce. She's not harmed, but she harmed her co-wife. So if you're trying to avoid all the possibilities of harming, you don't achieve anything by saying, let's wait till she gets married. The lechus, why aren't you worried if the reason is because she doesn't want to harm herself, and therefore we wait till she gets married? That doesn't prove anything, because maybe she has a divorce. The lechus, maybe she really actually has a get, and she hid it. And if the husband ever comes back alive, she'll just produce the get. In the meantime, she says the husband died. The co-wife will go ahead and marry somebody else, and now she's finished because she can't go back to the husband and so on. So she achieved her end, and if she's conniving and everything else. And the reason why she made up the cock to the story is to harm her co-wife. Maybe that's what she did it for. Says the Gemara, you're right. If she's married to Yisrael, you're right. We have no evidence. Maybe Taka wouldn't believe her. If we follow that side of the boya, that because she's harming herself, you're right. In this situation, we wouldn't believe the co-wife, wouldn't allow the co-wife to be free, because how do you know that the woman who came and testified is telling the truth? Maybe she has a get, but she's married to a kohen, and therefore, if she now married a kohen, having a get is not going to help her, because a divorcee is not allowed to marry a kohen. So if we see her, this is when Rabbi Elazar says that we release the co-wife. We're talking about a case where she came along and the other wife came and testified, our husband died, and then she got married, but she married a kohen. So you no longer say, oh, she's a conniving woman and she has a divorce somewhere buried in the top drawer. It's not going to help her, because a divorcee can't marry a kohen. So we haven't resolved the question, what's Rabbi Elazar? Now the Gemara concludes, the last few pages is about if to avoid a woman being an aguna, if her husband died, we have to come and give testimony. What exactly do we have to say? How do we know that person is actually your husband? There's a beautiful story written by Marcus Lehman called Out of the Depths, in the 5 novelettes, where a story about a case where everyone is supposed that the husband died, and the Rav did not want to let the woman get married because I know the husband's going to change clothes. Clothing alone is not article of clothing, is not really a proof, because maybe he swapped it with somebody, changed with somebody. I know it's him. He couldn't recognize any other parts of the body. And a very fascinating story. Turned out to be the husband was alive. Mishnah. So let's see the Mishnah. It's a big machlekes is a shaynim and how to understand this Mishnah. Ein me'idin. When you want to testify about a person that he's dead, ela al parts of ponim, you have to see the face. Im ha'chaytim, the nose has to be in place, and the eyes, and in order to be able to ascertain that this person is that person. Now, the big machlek is Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam and all the Rishonim. Rashi holds that even if the entire body is lying there, you have to be able to recognize a full face. Rabbeinu Tam says, no, we're talking about a case here where the head is severed from the body. Then you have to be able to recognize the full face. And here we say the nose and everything else. The Gemara would add also the forehead. But according to Rabbeinu Tam, if the entire body is intact, then if we have simonim on the body itself, that's good enough. We don't have to recognize the face. It says see the face. Even if there's no nose, parts of the face are missing. As long as you recognize the body, then it's good enough. And then the machlek is within Rabbeinu Tam itself, that then he says you have simonim on the body. What about you just recognize? Sometimes you recognize a person, you don't have any particular telltale signs, you just know that person. It's and Tviyas Ayin. That Tviyas Ayin is, so Rabbeinu Tam is saying either Tviyas Ayin or simonim on the body, or is he saying you need both? You need Tviyas Ayin, you recognize, but you also have to have some telltale sign, something, because there are degrees of simonim of hakim, which are very unique, that 1 in a million have, and then the simonim she'einu of hakim. You know this person has it, maybe other people have it as well, but between the Tviyas Ayin and the simonim she'einu look, that together it's good enough. Big machlekes, Shreini, Machreim, Chamsefer, and others. Fascinating. Says the Mishnah, even though there are simonim in the guf, and ubekela, so it never doesn't matter. You need, so according to Beitam, the second case altogether, according to Rashi, this is one case. We don't recognize the guf unless we can recognize the face. Even though there are some bodily simonim ubekela or his clothing. Another thing is you don't testify a tradition. Actually, you have to witness the person's death. Even if you saw that he was stabbed numerous times with tolov, or he was hanging, and you saw an animal eating his feet and so on. So these are three. Machlekes are showing whether these are three different cases or all one case. Even all in one case, you saw the guy stabbed many times, and then you saw that he was hanging. Then you saw an animal eating him. Still, you cannot testify until you actually saw the person back. How do you know he wasn't cured? How do you know he wasn't taken over the last minute and somehow another saved? You can only testify about a face up to 3 days, because beyond 3 days we say it's disfigured. And Rabbi Yehuda Baba says, there's no universal rule. Depends on the weather out there, if it's hot, cold, and so on and so forth. The Gemara will have a whole discussion whether he's saying that even beyond 3 days, or only, or if the person in a certain climate you can recognize, or he's saying that even 3 days he's being machmed. Not always 3 days, sometimes it might be 2 days and 1 day. Rabbeinu Tam again, and his Shitta argues and said this 3 days is only regarding the face, but Tzvias Ayin could go even beyond 3 days. If you recognize the person even beyond 3 days is good enough. That's what we learned. Bedachal, what happens? You see the forehead, parts of pony, we don't see the rest of the face. So parts of pony, bedachal, or the rest of the face, and you don't see the forehead. So you need the entire face, the forehead, and the nose. How do we know that pasuk? That you need the entire face? Because the pasuk hakoras pneim, recognize the face, unsabam, answered by them. So therefore, and as Rashi spells out, let's read to you. Alma, we see ein edus b'shar haguf ela behakapani. We don't care about the rest of the body. It might be there, and you recognize it's not good enough. We need to see the face. And Taisa says it's talking about it's a severed head. Abba bar Marta is also known as Abba bar Meyumi. Havimaski beit Vedish Glusa. He owed money to the Vedish Glusa. They were tough people. This is the exilage, head of the exilage in Bavel. I see, and he didn't pay. He couldn't pay on time. So what they did was to humiliate him. I see Kira. They brought some wax. Dovag Bibliyosa. They attached some materials in the wax. And then Dovag Bapusa, they placed it on his forehead. Cholav Kamayu, he walked in front of people. And nobody was able to recognize it. Why? Because he covered his forehead. I guess wearing a mask over your mouth, you can still recognize. Maybe, I don't know. I don't. But covering the forehead, somehow or another, you don't recognize the person at all. So the forehead is very important. We're saying over here that even though there are signs, nevertheless, you cannot. It's not good enough. If you don't see the head with the forehead and the nose and everything else, simonim in the body is not good enough. Now, so the Chayda would seem from here that the member of the Simonim loved the nice. It would seem that Mishnah holds having signs on the body. We'll have a discussion. The whole Gemara Elam Matzias and Simonim. That Simonim is the way you can tell if somebody this article belonged to somebody. Now, this concept of Simonim, is that from the Torah? That you don't have witnesses, but Simonim are equal to witnesses, or is that only with the Rabbanan because you have to have a society, things have to work. So in order to function, if you have signs that it's yours, it's good enough. Says the Gemara, it seems from our Mishnah, because it says you have some money in the body. It's not good enough to say to a woman, you're free now because we think that's your husband. But I mean, that's a question. I'll show you someone is the Torah that says if a person lost a divorce and then he found it, Machlekes is showing what we're talking about, that he, like Rashi says, he himself found it or somebody else found it. Because if he himself found it, some people say he has a migui. A migui is a good say, I never lost it. Now that he had lost it, but I found it, I know it's mine. Some say that's good enough. We don't care about anything else about some money, because obviously, why would he say that if he doubted it at all? Anyway, but either way, let's say if somebody else gave it back to him, or according to those who say it's not a migui, and he himself lost it, motzu, he found it kosher b'kishu b'aniki demas. He found it yet, but he found it later. It was tied to his wallet or tied to a ring or something that was his. Or he actually found it. So he found it amongst his articles of his own personal articles, and he recognizes the wallet. He recognizes the key. He doesn't really recognize the get, because the get is a standard, document. But he recognized where it was attached to his wallet or to his article of clothing, whatever it was. If we say it's his, the film even a long time later, kosher. Why is it kosher? Because we rely on the simon. And what are we doing with that? We are going to release a woman, which is an ish, a married woman. We're going to release it based on simonim. So that tells us that simonim is mahatayda. So machlekes, it seems between our Mishnah and that case over there. It's not a problem. Two different opinions. What am I talking about? The Tanya we learned, it said you cannot testify somebody if he has some kind of a boil, he has some kind of a mole, or some kind of a body defect, a growth on this body. That's not good enough. And it sounds like because simonim are not good enough. That's not we could testify. So their argument is therefore that's good enough to testify. And the Masavar that what Simon is the Rabban. I don't hold Simon the Rabban, and therefore everything is all right. So we see the machlekes tanoim, and that will be a machlekes for our Mishnah here that says you don't trust the money, and the Mishnah there that says that you do trust the money. Says the Gemara. In that case, it's talking about whether if you can say edus about a shumah if a man died and say, look, I know that's your husband because I saw this growth. I know that he has this mole or he has this whatever it is, this discoloration of skin or something there that it's his. So we have a number of answers, and it's from the Gemara here. It seems the Gemara is not clear if simonim are mahat or not. There's machlekes.
Are we comparing simonim that are external to simonim that are in the body? Is that the same?
Our Mishnah, it says that the idea of a simon. Right now, we're learning the idea of a simon, and we're talking about not about just money matter. We're talking about where it impacts on an iser. So now, Mishnah, we want to release the woman. Say her husband died, and we're saying a simonim on the guf. And then over there, we're relying on the simonim on a wallet to release the woman and say that the get is the same get. If it's not the same get, she's not divorced. It's the same get. So we're in both cases we're relying. And in fact, for ket, you would think that a simon on the goof would be stronger than a simon on, and yet that other place says that a simon on article is good enough, right? It's just, and if that matter that's good enough, surely a simon on the goof should be good enough. And Yevamos says not. So we found the machlekes tanoim, similar case about a shulna. So therefore, we'll say that that's the machlekes whether simonim in bechlal amatayda or midraban. So now we have a few answers to the Gemara. So it seems clearly the Gemara is not so clear if it's simonim the rice or not. Big machlekes are showing him as well. So the Gemara says over here. Okay, first answer. Amar Rav says Rav kuli alma simonim the rice. Now everyone knows that simonim is the rice. In the Gemara in the Tzia brings up psukim. The rice. Hachol here b'shuma mitzuya b'bengila kimifkid. Very interesting idea that somehow or another two people born at the same time will have them on the Dorim. It's something like it comes with a bigger chaylim. There's some kind of a kinship between people who are born in the same mazel, same day, the same time. They have similar mannerisms and similar genetics. So here we're saying that people born at that same time, the Ben Gili, might also have a shumah, other parts of the world. So the fact that you have a shumah is not a strong simon. And that's what is very interesting. Where that comes from, I don't know. But that's what the Gemara is saying here. As Rashi says, Ben Gili, they're born at the same time, under the same mazel. So not only do they have the same mannerisms, we're going, Gemini and all that kind of stuff, but also the physical features or defects might be similar as well. And that's exactly what they're arguing. That the Ma'asava shouldn't Ben Gila, that it's possible that a Ben Gila would have exactly the same thing. It was not a simon, that's a chachamim. And Rabbi Elazar Bavai says, ain't it Ben Gila? No, it doesn't work that way. And therefore it's a valid simon. But everyone holds simonim are valid. The question is whether this is called a simon or not. That's one explanation. Explanation number two. The others say, again, everyone holds that simonim is mahatoida. The question is, once a person dies, can there be changes in their body that enough that you say that that's no longer a simon? Maybe the shumah grew, maybe the shumah becomes smaller, maybe suddenly the shumah appears that wasn't there before, or maybe the shumah suddenly disappears. So because there are changes in a person's body post their life, that you can no longer say that this is a good simon. It does change after the shade changes or whatever, things change. It alters. It doesn't change after mis. So the first two answers are simonim mahatoida, and we're just explaining how they're arguing. However, ikadami, the third version, no, maybe no one agrees that simon the raisa. Everyone holds the simon the rabbanon. And the Gemara before, we talks about you gave the get back. You gave a get back to a woman because you found it tied to your wallet. How can you give it back to the woman? So maybe now we change the pshat in that thing there. We're talking about no longer a person giving it back to the person who lost it, but the person who lost it is the very same person who found it. And therefore we believe him because he has a migui and he recognized it. And that's why we give him. Otherwise, we would never give it to him. Or Traces brings a few answers, but the last answer is that we're going to see, even if you hold simonim is not in HaTorah, that's general simonim. But unique simonim is, and maybe that the get was tied to a wallet. It's not just lying near a wallet. In fact, the get was tied to a wallet, or the get was in your house amongst your articles. That's considered a very strong simon, not just an ordinary simon. That's a very strong simon. Says the Gemara here, the argument in Shumah whether the sim muvik, whether that's considered a sim muvik, because even if you hold simon like an ice, but a sim muvik is good enough. Therefore, that's the question. Masava sim muvik that a shumah is not a common thing, and therefore, and especially where in the body it is. Even if a shumah is common, but this person has it, in this part of the region of the body or that region of the body, that's unique. So therefore, even simon rabbanan, that might be considered simon deraisa. Masava sim muvik, it's not. It's quite common, and therefore, it's not considered a simon deraisa. And that's what they're arguing. Lishna says according to that version, with 3 versions here. The Amar Rabba, and that's how he explained the two the different Amar Rabba says Simon deraisa. So now that Lashon that says that Rabba said Simon is matoida Hoktani. It says in our Mishnah clearly Afal pi sheyesh Simonin begufay uvikel. It says in the Mishnah clearly there are Simonim in the goof, there are Simonim in the clothing, and yet our Mishnah says if there's no nose and the face features aren't there, it doesn't work. How can that be? So the Gemara said because the samanim and the guf that the Mishnah is talking about are not really samanim. For example, what's the samanim? You gufay the aruch. You say, oh, I remember he was 6 feet tall. That's not. That's a very thousands, millions of people are 6 feet tall. Or the goods very extraordinarily short. Many people are short. Caleb comes clothing. Even if you have very strong samanim regarding the clothing, you know why we don't accept it? The chayshin l'shayla. How do you know that he didn't lend his clothes to somebody else? I know that this clothes weren't borrowed. So therefore, that is why we don't trust simonim of clothing. We need more than that. Says the Gemara, if you find a wallet with a name, it means nothing. Because how do you know that it's his wallet? Maybe he stole it. Says the Gemara, if you tell me now that simonim are not good because you're always scared that maybe it was borrowed, so forget about matters of getting married, something else. So well, that's a general question. We learned the whole Gemara in the Mitzvahs. You find something, you can give it back. And one of the things that we say is if you recognize the saddle on the donkey, you give it back. It's simon. Why? Maybe it's a borrowed saddle. How can we give back a donkey by giving the signs of the saddle? What kind of proof is that? Says because people don't generally swap saddles of donkeys around because it's fit the size. It's custom made. Because the maximum of the chamra, if it's not custom made, it pokes into the donkey and it causes damage. So nobody would borrow someone else's saddle or lend its saddle out to others. Okay, it says, okay, what about the other case? Motzu, we learned before, Motzu Koshi, found to get tied to a piece or an arniki, a wallet, or the tabasa ring. Heichim madrinan, how can you give it back? Maybe it's a borrowed wallet, maybe it's a borrowed ring. Now that you introduced this whole new idea that doesn't prove it's yours, so all of these things, Simon, how do you work? So Gemara explains, tabas, these articles, people generally don't lend. Nobody lends their ring. Remember, in those days, ring was not just an ornament. That was a signature ring. And if the store has just signature ring, they can just copy it and then use the signature. And who knows what they can do? They can buy things and use the signature. You would never lend out your personal ring. So tabas, chayzel, ziyufin. Nobody can lend it out because you're scared somebody's going to forge it. Kisva aniki, and your personal wallet and articles, like you keep your money, you don't lend it out either. You know why? People were very superstitious. People are superstitious that this brings me good luck. I don't want to give it share with anybody else. So people generally did not lend their personal, they'll lend money, but they would never lend their personal wallet. And that's why a similar there is good enough. Or you say, I'll give you another answer. If you don't like this and you think that people generally don't lend anything, I'll tell you why our Mishnah says that kalim is not a good thing, because we're talking about just like by a person's height. We're talking about kalim color. White, red, not this very weak simon. So even the old simon love that I said, but if it's a unique simon, and that's the machlekes by Shuma, simon muvik, it does work. So you want further, you saw him stabbed many times. The member, so what are you really saying? The a person can be stabbed many times, but they can still continue living. That's why you cannot say that this person is dead unless you actually saw the person die in front of your eyes. But I mean, that's a question. It says, Adam, a person does not become tumah, does not generate tumah until he actually dies. Even if he's on the threshold of dying, it's not good enough. He has to die before he can generate tumah. All the contents in that house becomes tummy. Even if he's stabbed many times, even he's on the last steps on the threshold of death. Now it says here, it says he's not metame yet because he hasn't died yet, but definitely he'll definitely die. So why can't you testify that the guy is dead. He'll definitely die. Not now, in 5 minutes. So why can't you testify? Says the Gemara, time to learn, you can testify about somebody who was stabbed many times, but you cannot testify somebody was hanged. Because it could be when you walked away, somebody cut him off and saved his life. Even if he stabbed many times, you cannot testify. You can always heal him if you like burn those spots or you cauterize them, and he can survive. So you cannot say definitely the person died because you walked away before he died. Okay, so therefore, according to Rav Shimon Elazar, it's possible that he will live, and that's what you're saying over there, that by Tomei. And that's why we're saying over here that now Mishnah, that you cannot say that he's dead because he could be he'll live, and that place over there where it says Namatame, but he'll definitely die, it goes according to Rachamim. Says the Gemara, how in the world can you learn Al Mishnah and therefore we cannot testify the person has died? Because maybe somebody get cured or healed in the Tani Sefer. It says in the next Mishnah, Ma'aseh ba'Asya. There's a story that happened in Asya be'echa, a person sheshalu liyam. There's a person that they lowered him into the water, but then when they took him out of the water, what came back? The Ebiyadam El Rag. All they got was his foot. The Chacham is as follows. A shark came and bit off his foot or something. Do we say the person survived or not? We learn later on that water, endless water. You can never, if you saw somebody drown or not drown, so fall in the water, you cannot testify the person for sure is dead because you cannot see beyond a certain point. And maybe somehow or other he came out on the other side. Who knows? Sometimes they find people surviving days after their boat capsized. They hung onto a board or something. Nobody was able to see them, but they're there. So the Gemara says, so if you lower this person and you found that it depends. This is very interesting with the case that they have now in Australia. That woman who swindled all these people with money, and then they found her ankle and foot inside a shoe, right? And they're assuming that she's dead. However, the Gemara says depends. If it's it was cut off above the knee, then Tanase, she can get remarried because definitely the person will survive. But if it's below the knee, like Tanase, because it could be a person can survive. It could be a person can survive. Why? And we're not worried about drowning because it's possible. It's mine, shame, and maybe it came out another end. Yeah, and yeah, what do we see from here? But if it's above, then you can get married. So we see clearly from here that if you're stabbed, people don't live. It could be also that somebody came along and healed the person. We don't say that. How can you say a Mishnah of Shimon Elazar in the next Mishnah? Says Gemara, shiny Maya. Even Shimon Elazar will agree that because this guy was inside the water, the Mirza Makkah, the water aggravates and exacerbates the wound, and therefore above land, above the knee, you can still heal the person, but in the water, it's going to aggravate it, and you're going to die. So even Shulaz will agree. So what are you talking about? I once saw this with this peddler, this wandering salesman, the Shokal Safsida, took a knife, the guide the gamble, cut the leg off a camel, and the animal didn't stop, couldn't finish crying or yelling out, and it died. So we see from here that what? That they do die straight away. So the Gemara, Abai says that that wasn't an ordinary camel; it was a very weak camel. That's why it died, but it died straight away. But if it's a strong person, a person could survive, and therefore it was healed, while you walked away. So you cannot automatically conclude the person died. Rabba says no. Talking about a case here that they're talking about here. Besakin Melubenes, he used a kind of knife that was boiling hot. In other words, he put it in the fire and he made it, I guess he sterilized it and he made it very hot. And therefore, when he cut it, it automatically healed itself. We call it the divrei haka, because he used it could be that you also use it by a person. If you used a knife that's maluban, a knife that's very, very hot, it heals while it cuts. So therefore, it could be that you can live on. Could be you can live on. So that's how we explain this meguyed. That it's a machlekes tanoim, whether a person, you can still heal that person or you can no longer heal that person. Says the Gemara. Okay, says the Gemara further. Says the Gemara. So I just lost the place. You see the animal eating. If you saw the animal eating from parts of the body that the person doesn't, eating, let's say the foot. You saw the animal eating, let's say from the heart area or some other region that if that gets consumed completely, the person cannot survive. Then you can say the person definitely is dead. We know that two money, the esophagus and the thyroid. Let's say if you cut through both of them, the windpipe, or you cut through the majority of them, by shchita by an animal, that's kosher. So by person also borach, and then the person somehow or another, the victim fled is me'idin. You can testify that the person definitely died. There's no way that he could survive, even though you saw the guy leave and you didn't see what happened afterwards. You could definitely testify he didn't survive. He's not so and while he was there, after he shechted both of his things and he made a hint, he couldn't let you speak, but he alluded to or he hinted, he made some kind of gestures which said, "Kiss forget lishti, right to get to my wife." That they can give it because he's still considered alive. So the Gemara says that's not a problem. Chayu, right now he's stuck alive. You can testify definitely the person died. Definitely the person died. Because he's like a treifa and definitely the person died. Some say you have to wait 12 months before you can say definitely, because a treifa can live up to 12 months, as we had in Baruch. So if you're telling me that if you shechted to Samanim or most of to Samanim, definitely the person will die. So how come if somebody tries to murder somebody and shechts to both of them, he sets a knife through his neck, part of his neck, and shechts through both of these Samanim? The thing is that the person did it by mistake. It does not go to Goyla because he didn't really kill him. Alavatanya, we learned. Sorry, but you're saying that he that definitely he will die. So Alavatanya, why we learn you don't go to Golos because who said the person died? What do you mean who said the person died? You just said definitely the person will die. We learned about no. You know why you don't go to Golos? Because we believe the other factors involved as well. Taka, you started the whole thing. You were the catalyst. But maybe it was not the knife that killed him, but maybe the air that entered the body is what caused his death. So therefore, you're only a cause. You didn't actually murder him. Or maybe the guy was jumping around, and then itself, he brought it on faster. And therefore, there were like two partners in this crime, you and that victim himself. And therefore, you don't go to Golos because you have to be entirely, solely responsible for the person's death. What's the difference with my benai? What's the difference between these two reasons? What happens? You shut them in a house made out of marble, so there's no wind whatsoever. It's very still, but a parcha jumped around. So if the reason is because the wind, there's no wind, and therefore you're solely responsible, you got to go to Golos. But if the reason is because he contributed to it by jumping around, he still jumped around. Or inami the shachti outside, so there's plenty of wind, but the parcha didn't jump around. So therefore, wind, then you're not responsible. If the reason because jumping he didn't, then therefore you are. Abuse says.